In the heart of a bustling city, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and streets buzzed with the constant hum of activity, there lived a man named Ethan. He was known throughout the town as the reckless motorcyclist, someone who thrived on speed, danger, and living life on the edge. His shiny black motorcycle wasn't just a mode of transportation, it was an extension of his personality. Every time he revved its engine, heads turned, not always in admiration, but often in fear. Ethan didn't care about rules or traffic signals. To him, they were mere suggestions that applied to everyone else, but never to him. He weaved through cars like water slipping through cracks, laughing at honking horns and angry shouts from frustrated drivers. His friends cheered him on, calling him fearless, daring, and untouchable. But those who shared the road with him had different words: reckless, arrogant, and dangerous. One sunny afternoon, the city seemed livelier than usual. Street vendors called out to passersby, children played near park benches, and the air carried the faint smell of roasted peanuts. Ethan decided it was the perfect day for a ride. With his leather jacket zipped up and sunglasses shielding his eyes, he hopped onto his bike and roared off into the chaos of the streets. The wind whipped against his face as he sped past cars, relishing the thrill of breaking every rule in the book. As he approached a narrow street lined with shops, something caught his attention: a young girl walking slowly along the sidewalk. She held onto a harness attached to a golden retriever, her steps careful and deliberate. It was clear she couldn't see where she was going. Her name was Lily, though Ethan didn't know that yet. All he noticed was how slow she moved compared to the fast-paced world around her. The dog guiding her, Max, was well-trained and attentive, ensuring Lily stayed safe amidst the noise and commotion. But Ethan saw none of this. Instead, he smirked beneath his helmet, thinking how pathetic it must be to depend on a dog to navigate life. Without slowing down, he twisted the throttle of his bike, making the engine growl louder as he zoomed past Lily. The sudden roar startled her, causing her to pause mid-step. Max barked sharply, trying to steady his owner while also warning the speeding cyclist to back off. But instead of feeling even a hint of guilt, Ethan felt annoyed. Why should he have to slow down for someone like her? What gave her the right to take up space on the sidewalk when he could be enjoying himself without interruptions? As these thoughts raced through his mind, he glanced back at Lily and Max over his shoulder. That's when something inside him snapped. Max, sensing the tension, barked again, louder this time. For Ethan, it felt like a challenge, an insult to his dominance on the road. Furious, he slammed on the brakes, skidding to a stop right beside them. Pedestrians nearby gasped, unsure of what would happen next. Ethan swung his leg off the bike, his boots hitting the pavement with a thud. His shadow loomed over Lily and Max, but neither flinched. They couldn't see the anger etched across his face, but they could feel it in the air. And then, before anyone could react, Ethan did the unthinkable. Ethan's anger boiled over, clouding his judgment and pushing him to act on impulse. With a sneer twisting his face, he raised his foot and delivered a swift, cruel kick to Max, the loyal golden retriever who was doing nothing more than protecting his blind owner. The force of the blow sent Max stumbling backward with a yelp of pain, his legs buckling as he collapsed onto the pavement. Lily, hearing her beloved companion cry out, froze in horror. Her hands trembled as she knelt down, searching blindly for Max. Max. Oh no, Max, she cried, her voice cracking with panic. She found him lying on the ground, whimpering softly, and pulled him close to her chest. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she tried to comfort him, whispering soothing words into his fur. Around them, pedestrians stopped in their tracks, some covering their mouths in shock, while others stared at Ethan with wide, disbelieving eyes. No one dared to step forward. Fear of confronting such a volatile man kept them rooted to the spot. Ethan, meanwhile, felt a fleeting sense of satisfaction. In his twisted mind, he had put the dog in its place. He straightened up, brushing imaginary dust off his jacket as if what he'd done was perfectly justified. Glancing down at Lily, still cradling Max, he scoffed loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "That's what you get for getting in my way," he spat, his tone dripping with mockery. "Maybe next time you'll learn not to slow people down." With that, he climbed back onto his motorcycle, revving the engine dramatically. The loud growl echoed through the street, drowning out the murmurs of outrage from the crowd. Ethan shot one last disdainful look at Lily before speeding off, leaving behind a trail of smoke and stunned silence. The once bustling street now felt eerily quiet, save for Lily's soft sobs and Max's pained whimpers. As the initial shock wore off, a few brave bystanders approached Lily, offering help. One woman gently guided her to a nearby bench, while another called an animal rescue hotline to report the incident. Someone even snapped a photo of Ethan's license plate, determined to ensure that justice would be served. But despite their kindness, Lily couldn't shake the image of Max being kicked so viciously. It wasn't just the physical pain inflicted on her faithful companion. It was the sheer cruelty behind the act that left her heart aching. Word of the incident spread quickly. By evening, social media was ablaze with posts condemning Ethan's behavior. Videos captured by witnesses showed him kicking Max and mocking Lily, leaving little room for doubt about his guilt. People were outraged, calling him everything from heartless to despicable. Yet, amidst all the fury, Lily remained calm. While the world demanded retribution, she simply wanted answers. Why would someone do something so cruel? And could anything good possibly come from this tragedy? Unbeknownst to her, however, Ethan wasn't entirely unaffected either. As he rode home, adrenaline still coursing through his veins, fragments of the scene replayed in his mind. He told himself he'd done nothing wrong, that people like Lily and Max were weak and deserved to be put in their place. But deep down, a tiny seed of unease began to take root. Try as he might to ignore it, the memory of Lily's tear-streaked face lingered, haunting him in ways he couldn't yet understand. Ethan returned to his apartment that evening, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. On the surface, he acted as though nothing had happened. He tossed his helmet onto the couch, grabbed a cold drink from the fridge, and turned on the television, trying to distract himself with loud music videos and flashing lights. But no matter how hard he tried, the image of Lily kneeling on the sidewalk, cradling her injured dog, refused to leave his thoughts. At first, Ethan convinced himself it was just guilt, a fleeting emotion that would pass once he got some rest. "It's not my problem," he muttered under his breath, flipping through channels aimlessly. "She shouldn't have been in my way. That dog shouldn't have barked at me. It's their fault, not mine." The more he repeated these excuses, the more he believed them, or at least he wanted to believe them. But as the night wore on, strange things began to happen. His motorcycle, which had always been perfectly tuned, started making odd noises when he revved the engine outside earlier. Now, sitting alone in his dimly lit living room, Ethan noticed other peculiarities. His phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, but when he checked it, there were no messages or calls. The screen displayed only static for a brief moment before returning to normal. Then came the dreams. That night, Ethan fell into a restless sleep, plagued by vivid nightmares. In his dream, he found himself standing in complete darkness, surrounded by glowing eyes that seemed to watch his every move. At first, the eyes were distant, flickering faintly like fireflies, but slowly they drew closer, circling him until he felt trapped. A low growl echoed in the void, growing louder with each passing second. Suddenly, a massive shadow lunged at him, its teeth gleaming white against the blackness. Ethan woke up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. He shook his head, telling himself it was just stress playing tricks on him. "Get a grip," he said aloud, pacing around his apartment to calm down. Yet even after turning on all the lights and checking every corner for anything unusual, the unease lingered. For the first time in years, Ethan felt vulnerable, like something was watching him, waiting. The next morning didn't bring relief. As he prepared to leave for work, his motorcycle wouldn't start. No matter how many times he pressed the ignition button, the engine remained stubbornly silent. Frustrated, Ethan kicked the side of the bike, muttering curses under his breath. When he finally managed to get it running later that day, the engine sputtered unpredictably, forcing him to ride cautiously, a sharp contrast to his usual reckless style. Back at home, Ethan scrolled through social media, only to find posts about the incident flooding his feed. Videos of him kicking Max had gone viral, accompanied by outraged comments calling for justice. Some people even claimed they recognized his bike or jacket, speculating about where he lived. Though none of it directly named him, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that the world was closing in on him. Still, he clung to denial. "They don't know it's me," he reasoned, scrolling past the angry faces and hateful words. "Even if they did, who cares? I'm untouchable." Yet, deep down, the cracks in his bravado were beginning to show. Every creak of the floorboards made him jump. Every bark from a dog outside sent chills down his spine. And every time he closed his eyes, those glowing ones from his nightmare reappeared, staring straight into his soul. For the first time in his life, Ethan wondered if he'd gone too far. But instead of seeking answers or making amends, he buried himself deeper in excuses. After all, admitting fault meant facing consequences, and Ethan wasn't ready for that. Or so he thought. While Ethan wrestled with his growing unease, Lily was determined to pick up the pieces and seek justice, not for revenge, but to ensure that no one else would suffer the same cruelty. Max's injuries were severe, but thankfully not life-threatening. The veterinarian assured her that with rest and care, he would recover fully. Still, seeing her loyal companion in pain broke Lily's heart. Max wasn't just a guide dog. He was her best friend, her protector, and her lifeline to the world. Determined to hold Ethan accountable, Lily reached out to Sarah, a local journalist known for uncovering stories of injustice. Sarah had a reputation for being relentless in her pursuit of truth, and Lily hoped she could help shed light on what had happened. When they met at a quiet cafe, Lily recounted the entire incident in a calm yet resolute voice. Though her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, her words carried strength and conviction. "I'm not doing this because I want him punished," Lily explained, clutching a small charm bracelet shaped like a paw print, the same one Max used to wear before it went missing during the attack. "I'm doing this so people understand how dangerous someone like him can be. If we don't speak up, who knows who else might get hurt?" Sarah listened intently, jotting down notes and promising to dig deeper into the case. She suggested checking nearby security cameras, hoping to gather evidence that could identify Ethan. Together, they visited shop owners along the street where the incident occurred. To their surprise, many were eager to help. One store owner provided footage showing Ethan speeding past pedestrians moments before stopping to confront Lily and Max. Another captured the actual moment of violence, his camera angle clearly revealing Ethan's face as he delivered the cruel kick. With undeniable proof now in hand, Sarah wasted no time publishing an article online. The piece included screenshots from the videos, eyewitness accounts, and a heartfelt plea from Lily about the importance of kindness and accountability. Within hours, the story gained traction, sparking outrage across the city. People demanded answers, flooding social media with calls for action against Ethan. Some even recognized his distinctive motorcycle or leather jacket, speculating about his identity. Despite the mounting pressure, Lily made an unexpected decision. She wanted to confront Ethan personally. When Sarah asked why, Lily simply replied, "Anger won't fix anything. Maybe if he hears my side of the story, if he sees how much Max means to me, he'll realize what he did was wrong." Armed with courage and guided by a trusted friend, Lily tracked down Ethan's address using information gathered during the investigation. Standing outside his apartment building, she took a deep breath, clutching the paw print charm bracelet tightly in her hand. It symbolized everything Max represented: loyalty, resilience, and unconditional love, and she hoped it might soften even the hardest of hearts. When Ethan answered the door later that evening, he froze in disbelief. There she was, the blind girl whose life he'd disrupted, standing calmly before him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Lily broke the silence, her voice steady and clear. "My name is Lily," she began, "and I came here to ask you something. Why did you do it? What made you think it was okay to hurt Max and mock me?" Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Instead, he found himself staring at the fragile yet unshakable figure in front of him, and wondering, for the first time, if maybe he'd underestimated her strength all along. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, his mind racing as he stared at Lily. Her presence was unexpected, unnerving even. She didn't shout or cry. Instead, she spoke with a quiet confidence that made it impossible for him to look away. Her words hung in the air between them, simple yet piercing. "Why did you do it? What made you think it was okay to hurt Max and mock me?" For a moment, Ethan felt cornered, like a wild animal caught in a trap. His instinct was to lash out, to defend himself with sarcasm or anger, anything to regain control of the situation. He sneered, leaning against the doorframe as if trying to appear casual. "You're blind," he said bluntly, his tone dismissive. "What does it matter why I did it? You can't even see me." Lily tilted her head slightly, her expression calm but firm. "That's true," she replied without hesitation. "I may not be able to see your face, but I can hear your voice. And right now, all I hear is someone who doesn't understand how much pain they've caused, not just to me, but to an innocent dog who was only doing his job." Her words struck a nerve. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact even though she couldn't see him. He wanted to argue, to tell her she had no idea what she was talking about. But something about the way she carried herself, the quiet strength in her voice, made it hard for him to respond. Instead, he resorted to mockery, hoping to push her away. "You really think coming here will change anything? Do you expect me to apologize? To feel sorry for you?" Lily didn't rise to his bait. She simply reached into her pocket and pulled out the small paw print charm bracelet. Holding it up gently, she extended it toward him. "This was Max's favorite," she said softly. "He loved wearing it when we went on walks together. Maybe keeping it will remind you of what you did. And maybe, just maybe, it'll remind you of your humanity." Ethan hesitated, unsure of what to do. Part of him wanted to slam the door in her face, to retreat back into his world of arrogance and denial. But another part, a part he barely acknowledged, felt a flicker of shame. The charm bracelet dangled from her fingers, glinting faintly under the hallway light. It seemed so small, so insignificant, yet it carried a weight far greater than its size suggested. When Ethan finally took it, his hand trembled slightly, though he tried to hide it. He muttered something under his breath, some half-hearted excuse meant to justify his actions. But Lily didn't press him further. She simply nodded, sensing that this confrontation had planted a seed, one that might grow into understanding, or perhaps redemption. As she turned to leave, guided by her friend waiting patiently outside, Ethan watched her go, the charm bracelet still clutched tightly in his palm. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt uneasy, as if the bracelet itself held some kind of power over him. Shaking off the thought, he closed the door and leaned against it, letting out a heavy sigh. But the encounter stayed with him long after Lily was gone. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Ethan found himself thinking about her words, about Max, about the glowing eyes in his nightmares, and most of all, about the tiny charm bracelet sitting silently on his coffee table, waiting for him to make sense of everything, or nothing at all. That night, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The charm bracelet sat on his coffee table, catching the faint glow of the streetlights filtering through his window. He stared at it, half expecting it to do something, anything, but it remained still, harmless looking, and yet strangely unsettling. It wasn't just the bracelet itself. It was what it represented, guilt, accountability, and a connection to a world he had always dismissed. As he lay in bed, sleep eluded him. His mind kept replaying Lily's visit, the calmness in her voice, the way she didn't flinch when he mocked her, and the look of quiet determination on her face. She hadn't come to yell or demand justice. She'd come to make him see, and for reasons he couldn't explain, that bothered him more than anything else. Then, around midnight, something extraordinary happened. Ethan's vision began to blur. At first, he thought it was exhaustion playing tricks on him, but within seconds, everything went completely dark. Panic surged through him as he bolted upright in bed, waving his hands in front of his face. Nothing. No light, no shadows, no shapes, just an endless void. "What the—" he stammered, his voice trembling. He stumbled out of bed, tripping over furniture and knocking things over as he fumbled toward the door. The apartment felt alien now, unfamiliar and terrifying. Every step was a gamble, every sound amplified tenfold. For the first time in his life, Ethan understood what it meant to be truly blind. Fear gripped him like a vice, and he called out desperately, hoping someone, anyone, would hear him. But there was no answer. He was alone, trapped in a darkness so absolute it felt suffocating. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. Time seemed irrelevant without sight. Ethan's initial panic gave way to despair. He sank to the floor, leaning against the wall, clutching the charm bracelet he'd absent-mindedly taken with him. Tears welled up in his eyes, though they were invisible even to himself. In those long, agonizing moments, he experienced a fraction of what Lily lived with every day, and it shattered him. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the darkness lifted. Light flooded back into his vision, blinding him momentarily before everything returned to normal. Ethan blinked rapidly, gasping for air as if he'd surfaced from underwater. He looked down at the charm bracelet still clutched tightly in his hand, its tiny paw print glinting innocently under the light. Had it been real, or had he imagined the whole thing? Shaken to his core, Ethan spent the rest of the night sitting on the edge of his bed, staring blankly at the wall. The experience left him rattled, unable to deny the strange connection between the bracelet and his sudden, inexplicable blindness. Was it some kind of supernatural punishment, a message from the universe, or simply a bizarre coincidence? Whatever it was, one thing was clear: it had changed him. For the first time, Ethan allowed himself to truly reflect on his actions. He thought about Max, whimpering in pain after being kicked, and Lily, kneeling on the sidewalk, tears streaming down her face. He remembered the glowing eyes in his nightmares and the weight of the bracelet in his palm. Slowly, painfully, he began to realize the depth of his cruelty, not just to Lily and Max, but to everyone he'd ever hurt with his reckless behavior. By morning, Ethan knew what he had to do. He couldn't explain the events of the night, nor could he dismiss them as a dream. All he knew was that he needed answers, and perhaps forgiveness. Clutching the charm bracelet tightly, he resolved to find Lily again. Whether it was fate, karma, or something beyond human understanding, the unbelievable twist had forced him to confront a truth he'd spent years running from. Actions have consequences, and redemption begins with taking responsibility. The next morning, Ethan woke up feeling like a different person. The weight of the previous night's experience lingered heavily on his mind, refusing to let him brush it off as just another strange occurrence. He couldn't stop thinking about the hours he'd spent in total darkness, how helpless and vulnerable he'd felt, how every sound had seemed magnified, and how even the simplest tasks had become insurmountable challenges. It was as if someone had forced him to step into Lily's shoes, if only for a short time. Determined to find answers, Ethan decided to track her down again. This time, however, his intentions were different. He wasn't looking for a fight or trying to prove himself right. He genuinely wanted to understand what had happened, and why. Armed with the charm bracelet still clutched tightly in his hand, he retraced his steps to the cafe where they'd met before, hoping she might return there. To his surprise, Lily was already seated at a corner table, sipping tea while Max rested quietly beside her. Seeing them together made Ethan pause for a moment. There was something peaceful about their bond, something that radiated warmth and trust despite everything they'd been through. Taking a deep breath, he approached cautiously, unsure of how she would react to seeing him again. "Lily," he began hesitantly, his voice softer than usual. "Can we talk?" She turned toward the sound of his voice, her expression calm but guarded. After a brief pause, she nodded. "Of course," she said simply, patting the seat across from her. Ethan sat down, fidgeting nervously as he placed the charm bracelet on the table between them. "I need to know," he blurted out. What is this thing? Did you do something to me last night?" Lily raised an eyebrow, clearly confused. "Do something to you," she repeated. "Like what?" Ethan struggled to explain, stumbling over his words as he described the sudden blindness and the overwhelming sense of fear that had gripped him. As he spoke, he half expected her to laugh or accuse him of lying. But instead, she listened intently, her brow furrowed in thought. When he finished, she shook her head gently. "I didn't do anything," she said honestly. "That bracelet belonged to Max. It's just a keepsake, a reminder of happier times." Her answer left Ethan more bewildered than ever. If Lily hadn't caused his bizarre experience, then what had? Was it guilt manifesting in strange ways? Some kind of cosmic punishment? Or perhaps, as much as he hated to admit it, something beyond human comprehension? Whatever the explanation, one thing was clear. The incident had shaken him to his core. Seeing the turmoil in his eyes, Lily softened her tone. "Look," she said quietly, "I don't know why that happened to you. And frankly, neither do I care. What matters is what you choose to do now. Are you going to keep running away from your mistakes, or are you willing to make things right?" Her question struck a chord deep within him. For so long, Ethan had lived life on his own terms, caring little about the consequences of his actions. But now, faced with the undeniable impact of his cruelty, he realized he couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. Slowly, he nodded. "Tell me what I can do," he said, surprising even himself with the sincerity in his voice. Lily smiled faintly, sensing a glimmer of change in him. She suggested volunteering at a local shelter for disabled animals, explaining that working with creatures like Max might help him develop empathy and perspective. At first, Ethan balked at the idea. Spending time around animals wasn't exactly his idea of fun. But something about her suggestion resonated with him. Maybe it was the chance to redeem himself, or maybe it was the hope that helping others could ease the guilt gnawing at his soul. Reluctantly, Ethan agreed. Over the following weeks, he began visiting the shelter regularly, assisting with feeding, grooming, and training animals who had been abandoned or mistreated. To his astonishment, he found himself growing attached to them, especially a scrappy little terrier named Daisy who reminded him of Max. Each small act of kindness brought him closer to understanding the value of compassion and the pain caused by its absence. Though he still didn't fully understand the mysterious events that had led him here, Ethan knew one thing for certain. His journey toward redemption had only just begun. Over time, Ethan's visits to the animal shelter became more than just a way to make amends. They transformed him in ways he never thought possible. At first, he approached the work with reluctance, seeing it as a chore or punishment for his past actions. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, something remarkable happened. The animals, once strangers to him, began to trust him. Their wagging tails, eager licks, and affectionate nudges slowly chipped away at the walls he built around his heart. Daisy, the scrappy little terrier who had initially been wary of everyone, became his closest companion at the shelter. She followed him everywhere, her joyful energy infectious. One day, while teaching her how to navigate an obstacle course designed for disabled dogs, Ethan realized he was smiling, not out of pride or arrogance, but because he genuinely felt happy. It was a foreign sensation, one he hadn't experienced in years. Helping these animals gave him a sense of purpose he'd never found in speeding through city streets or seeking thrills on his motorcycle. Lily noticed the change too. Occasionally, she would visit the shelter to check on Max, who had fully recovered from his injuries and now served as a therapy dog for other animals. Seeing Ethan interact with the dogs, patiently guiding them, and celebrating their progress, made her believe that people could change, even someone as hardened as him. Though their conversations were brief, they carried a mutual respect that hadn't existed before. Lily no longer saw Ethan as the reckless man who had hurt her and Max. Instead, she saw someone trying, however imperfectly, to be better. One crisp autumn afternoon, Ethan arrived at the shelter wearing a new patch on his leather jacket, a golden paw print stitched neatly over his heart. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it meant everything to him. When Lily spotted it during her visit, she smiled knowingly. "Looks good on you," she remarked, nodding toward the patch. Ethan chuckled nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, well, figured I owed it to Max and Daisy." By this point, Ethan's life had taken a completely different direction. He still rode his motorcycle, but he did so responsibly, respecting traffic laws and pedestrians alike. The thrill of danger no longer appealed to him. Instead, he found joy in simpler things, like watching Daisy master a new trick or hearing Lily laugh when Max playfully stole a sock from the laundry basket. These moments may have seemed small, but to Ethan, they were monumental. As winter approached, Ethan decided to take another step forward. With Lily's encouragement, he joined a community outreach program aimed at educating young riders about road safety and responsible behavior. Standing in front of a group of teenagers, many of whom idolized him for his daring reputation, Ethan spoke candidly about his mistakes and the consequences they'd brought. "Being reckless doesn't make you strong," he told them. "Real strength comes from knowing when to slow down, for yourself, for others, and for those who can't protect themselves." The audience listened intently, hanging onto his every word. For the first time in his life, Ethan felt like he was making a real difference, not by being untouchable, but by being human. Months later, as snow blanketed the city, Ethan stood outside the shelter with Lily and Max by his side. They weren't friends exactly, but there was a quiet understanding between them, a bond forged through pain, forgiveness, and growth. As Ethan watched Max bound happily through the snow, he realized he'd come full circle. What started as a cruel act of recklessness had ended with redemption, proving that even the hardest hearts could soften if given a chance. And though Ethan still didn't understand the mysterious events that had led him here, the glowing eyes, the blindness, the charm bracelet, he knew one thing for certain. Sometimes life teaches its hardest lessons in the most unexpected ways, and sometimes those lessons lead us to become the person we were always meant to be.